want to talk a little bit about the mechanics of using a knife. Get a lot of various styles, grips, usages, but there's only a limited number of ways you can hold a knife. There's only a limited number of ways you can actually cut with a knife. Now, most of these are determined by the target, the orientation of the knife to your hand, and the knife to the target. So we're going to look at basically a single-edged blade. If the knife is perpendicular to the target, and you're moving the knife perpendicular to the target, that's a stab. Perpendicular to the target, moving it parallel to the target, that's a slash, generally with the tip. Okay? Pretty much parallel to the target, moving parallel to the target, that's a slice. Parallel to the target and moving it at a right angle, perpendicular, that's a chop. Again, those would be with the edge generally. For holding it, you've got it essentially parallel with the forearm. This would be a fencing or saber type grip. You've got it, point on the thumb side, right angle to the forearm. That's your hammer grip. You put it in a reverse grip. That's your ice pick grip. Again, the blade is essentially at a right angle to the forearm. You bring it back in to a reverse grip. You're almost, is essentially the reverse of the saber grip. It's back along the forearm, running parallel to the forearm. And you should be able to move back and forth between an ice pick and a reverse grip. Likewise, you can move from a saber grip to the hammer grip. You need a power stab, especially at a right angle. Now the edge, you're limited somewhat. Your wrist is a universal joint. Your shoulder is a universal joint. Your elbow is a hinge. So in general, I like to keep, in a saber grip, whatever, the edge so that it moves with the elbow. That way if I'm doing a chop or a slash, the edge is working with me. Now, you can also carry it edge up, and especially, it's a very powerful technique, carrying it in a hammer grip with the edge reversed. Come up underneath, like that. Likewise, I prefer in a reverse grip, edge out. Allows me to strike that way or that way. Again, moving with the elbow. But you can, a lot of people like edge in. Again, very powerful stroke, but it limits it a bit. Moving it forward, catching the back. And you can strike with the spine of the blade. You can strike with the pommel. But you're a little bit limited in the mechanics of the elbow, in how you can hold the blade, and again, in its relation to the target. So you need to look at that and how much force. Now, one of the advantages of a knife over, say, bare hands or stick is it doesn't require a lot of force to do damage with a knife. But you do have to be able to apply some force. And the easiest thing to do is just take yourself a steak. How easy is it to cut a steak? Some of these grips that people like, you actually try and use it on something. It's putting you at a bad mechanical advantage to try and use the knife. Now, a lot of people denigrate knife fighting. They go on about knife dueling, or they've had a 2-day seminar in World War II combatives, or they're just afraid of knives. And I'm not going out to stab somebody, so the prison yard surprise blitz attack doesn't do me a lot of good. Now I need to be aware of it, because that's a very popular form of attack. I might be on the receiving end of it. Am I likely to be on the given end of it? No, I'm not. So a little bit of training. And as far as knife fighting goes, if all I'm armed with is a knife and somebody attacks me, I'm going to defend myself with a knife. If somebody who has a knife attacks me, I'm going to defend myself against a knife. Well, guess what? That's a knife fight, And if I happen to have a knife and they've got a knife and everything, and there are parts of the world where you can get into a knife fight very easily. The firearms are either not very available, or just due to cultural differences, they're not used. And you can get into sort of traditional knife duels in a lot of places in the world. So it's something to be aware of, especially if you're traveling. But yeah, the mechanics of it, they haven't changed since the first man chipped out a piece of obsidian to stab his buddy. And that's going to limit your techniques. And again, positions, and that's the biggest portion of knife fighting, and not how you hold the blade so much, is how do you get into a position where you can apply your blade, and then study your anatomy, because that's how you're going to be applying it. You're going to have to go for specific targets. I think the current rage is biomechanical cutting. Well, it's dead simple. I want my opponent to stop. And it's just like with a handgun. I don't care if he keels over later and doesn't make it to the ER, you know, dead on arrival or whatever. I want him to stop what he's doing. And frankly, if I come out with a blade and square up and he decides he needs to go rob somebody else, hey, that's great. If I can get a couple of shallow slashes and he gets some blood in the eyes, decides he's hurt and goes away, that's great too. But the only thing, those are both essentially psychological. The only thing that's really going to stop him is the damage that I do with the blade. If I'm on the ground, cut his Achilles tendon so he can't stand anymore, he's probably going to quit kicking me. So, but things to keep aware. And again, physics apply to everybody. Physics apply to everything. So you need to look at what you're doing and look at how the mechanics, how the physics are applying to what you're doing.